Hey, what is up, YouTube? Kolst here. So I wanted to make this video talking about the 10 most broken cards of the new expansion Fracture in Alterac Valley, which is coming out on Tuesday. With this, of course, there will be a new rotation as well, where I believe all of the cards outside of the core set are going to be completely fresh. So if there are any cards you've been, wanting to not play around with, like something of the Galaka variety, maybe they're all going to be gone, so you don't have to worry about them. So it's going to be a very fresh, exciting time to be playing Arena, especially if you're waiting for dual class to end, because that's ending as well. And of course, as always, if you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. Even though YouTube destroyed the dislike button for some reason, I still want that back. It's very annoying to me. And comment and subscribe and all of that stuff. But with that, let's get right into the list. Alright, so I am going to try to put these cards from what I think is weakest to strongest. So starting here at number 10, we have Ivis the Forest Lord. The way it works and the way you're going to want to use this, you're going to want to play this in the mid game. Spends all of your mana, and then you get Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt, or +2/+2 randomly. So you want to spend enough mana. The one that you can repeat, by the way, is the +2/+2. So essentially you play this for 7 mana, you hopefully get probably Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt, and then you get, at that point, you get 3, so it would be a 7/7, right? So the way that this is going to work, essentially, you're going to play this in the mid game, and it's going to perform very similarly to Siamat, basically. But if you just look at that, like as I said, on 7 mana, it's going to have Taunt, and it's going to be a 7/7, potentially. Or it might lose one of those and just be a 9/9. So it could be a little awkward sometimes, because you might need to play it, and then you want Rush, and you just don't get it. That could be a little weird, or you don't get Divine Shield. So you just have stats and Rush when you want to hit something really big. So it could be a little awkward, but most of the time it's going to be pretty good, even if you miss something. So it's a very, very solid card. And I actually have it rated as the strongest neutral legendary of the set. So a very, very solid card. But with that, let's move on to number 9, which is a mage spell known as Build a Snowman. So this is 3 mana to get a 3/3 that freezes, which then gives you a 6 mana 6/6 that freezes, and a 9 mana 9/9 that freezes. This is basically a reincarnation of Pyros, but basically it's a bit better. Pyros, I think the stats on this are slightly better than it was with Pyros. Getting a 10 mana 10/10 at the end of the day usually isn't that good, but also, the fact that it freezes is very significant. And one other critical point too is that if you have 9 mana and you can do this, you have this in your hand, then you can actually do the 3 and the 6 both at once. You cannot do that because Pyros, you had to rely on it dying, which also meant it could get silenced away. And this cannot get silenced away. So a whole bunch of reasons why this is just better than Pyros. I always thought Pyros was a little overrated. So like, I know some people rate it as like the best card ever, but I mean, I never had that experience with it, but it is obviously an insane amount of value. And I think this is significantly better than Pyros. So this is definitely a good card. I was able to put it into the top 10 of my list. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Serathine Runner. This is a 5 mana 5/5 battle cry. Replace your minions in hand and deck with ones from other classes. They cost 2 less. So this will rely a bit on what rotation you have, how good the average class card is. But generally speaking, class cards are pretty good, with the exception that sometimes you just get awkward misses with synergy, But essentially, I mean, this is going to be very similar to Lady Prester. I think, overall power level, it'll probably be pretty similar as well. Lately, Prester's been nuts just because the Dragon Pool's been a little crazier. So you're probably less likely to get a super broken class card than you are get a super broken dragon, but definitely speaking, this is going to be a good effect. It will provide a similar kind of inevitability of win condition that a Lady Prester does. And sometimes you're just going to get like some really busted tempo card, which happens to be discounted by 2, so it'll just, it's the same thing as like getting a 3 mana Ysera, getting some, just something like a 4 mana fire elemental, for example, might just straight up win you the game. Moving on to number 7 on this list, we have the 7 mana hunter card, Mountain Bear. This is a 7 mana 5/6 with taunt, with death rattle, summon 2/2/4 cubs with taunt. So frankly, like, this is almost like Carnival Clown levels of taunt, basically. And also, it's just like a much better version of High Main, basically. You're actually not getting that much more stats than High Main. About the same efficiency, but just having that taunt is so annoying. If they're not able to silence this or something, like, they're just not getting through it ever. So you might be able to just hit them in the face with the rest of your board, and they might just not be able to do anything, right? So overall, just an incredibly, incredibly solid minion. And worth noting as well, since all the cards are rotating out, that 4 mana silence is rotating. So there will be some other ways to transform, but that most common way to do it in neutral is not going to be there. So this is going to be that much better. Moving on now to number 6 on this list, we have the Shaman card, Snowfall Guardian. So this is a 5 mana 3/3 with battle cry to freeze all other minions and gain +1/+1 for each frozen minion. So it is very important to note that it freezes your own stuff too. It's also very important to note when it freezes your own stuff, it buffs this thing even more, right? And now freezing your own stuff obviously isn't not the greatest thing to do, but because you're freezing both boards, as long as, all the stuff you freeze doesn't get AoE'd immediately, like you still will be able to have the same initiative as if you're attacking with them. You can either choose to attack with them first and then play this, or you can just not attack with them, freeze them immediately so that they can then attack the next turn and probably do the exact same attack or find a better attack than you would have done. So I think overall the downside of this really isn't going to be that significant. It's only really significant if you're just trying to play aggro and kill your opponent as quickly as possible. But otherwise, I see this as being mostly upside. And I think you're going to be able to, anytime you actually are going to want to play this, it's going to be pretty darn big too. It only needs 3 hits to be a 6/6. So I think this is just an extremely powerful card. Some like slower decks, for example, would play Frost Nova for 3 mana, where for 2 extra mana, you get like maybe a 7/7 or something. It's just absolutely nuts. Just a very good card. So moving on to the top 5 on this list now, we have Wild Paw Cavern, another Shaman spell. This one is one of the objective type cards, where at the end of your turn, summon a 3/4 elemental that freezes last 3 turns. So I mean, you can compare a pretty good card in Arena would be like Water Elemental, which is a 3/6 that freezes, right? So after you get the 3/4 immediately, but then after another turn, you get another 3/4. So you can imagine, like, even if you say that, with Water Elemental, you're like, well, it could value trade something. Like if it value trades a 4/3, then you get a 3/2 Water Elemental. Well, with this thing, you just get a 3/4, another 3/4. If this thing's able to kill like a 3/3 or something, then you, instead of just having a 3/3, then you get a 3/1 and a 3/4, which is so much better. And then at the end of the next turn, you get another 3/4. This is just like absurd number of stats. I mean, I mentioned Carnival Clone earlier. It's like, 9 mana for 3/4/4s. This is 4 mana for 3 3/4s. And even though they're delayed, it's just such an insanely large number of stats that it's just seems absolutely busted. If your opponent just plays this on turn 4 or even coins it on turn 3, you're going to have problems. And did I mention they freeze stuff? But with that, let's move on to number 4 on the list, which is Brasswing, the Paladin Dragon. For 8 mana at the end of your turn, deal 2 damage to all enemies, honorable kill, restore 4 health to your hero. So basically, you compare this to Baron Geddon. Baron Geddon hits yourself in the face. It also hits all your other minions in the face, but it does deal 2 damage to all other characters, but it doesn't heal you. And part of the problem with Baron Geddon sometimes in a slow deck is the fact that it actually hurts you. I have won games by just leaving my opponent's Baron Geddon alone and waiting until they killed off the enemy hero. But with this thing, if you get to kill anything, if there are multiple 2 health minions, you just heal up to full almost. It's just crazy amount of value in a slower deck over Baron Geddon, basically just for that reason. And similar to Baron Geddon, of course, it repeats. If you're not able to kill this, it just keeps doing it, and you'll have more opportunities to set up the honorable kill. So it just does, crazy amount. And by the way, even if this thing were to kill something with 9 health, you would also heal. So this is like the ultimate defensive win condition for a control deck. It just doesn't have taunt. That's the one thing. Otherwise, does everything you could ever want. Very good. And with that, let's move on to the top 3 on this list. And I think for me personally, this is where I draw the line of like where a card is probably acceptable to have in Arena, because the next 3 cards here are probably cards that I think should not be allowed into Arena. So the first one we have here is Abominable Lieutenant. This is an 8 mana 3/5. At the end of your turn, eat a random enemy minion and gain its stats. So this thing is very similar to another card which in rather recent memory was banned pre-release in Arena because they knew how dumb it would be, which was Runaway Blackwing. This is a 9 mana 9/9 with a very similar effect. I mean, deal 9 damage is often like kill a minion. It's just this thing goes through Divine Shield, that's the main difference, but also it grows. So Runaway Blackwing has the same thing where if you don't kill it, you probably just lose, right? Because I mean, it'll hit you in the face if it needs to, but otherwise, like you just will never stick a minion again, basically. And this thing does effectively the exact same thing, but again, like if you're not able to kill it immediately, it's going to keep growing and become even more unkillable. So, oh, and I mentioned it costs one less mana also. So generally speaking, I very much don't like these types of cards that, essentially put you into an unlosable position if you just don't have a very specific answer to it. So the one thing about this though is that it is an epic, so it won't be quite as common as Blackwing would have being a rare, but still it's going to be, an unpleasant thing to play against. So hopefully it does get removed. Now let's move on to number 2, which is the Hunter Weapon Bloodseeker. So this is a 2/2 weapon with honorable kill, gain +1/+1. So in a sense, this is almost like an anti-Gorehowl. It just goes the opposite direction. It keeps growing, which is a little terrifying. There's some level of counterplay that maybe you can deny the honorable kill and maybe it won't do too much, but a lot of the times that's going to be a little too difficult to do. If they have this on turn 2, you're going to be very sad because it has 2 health, has 2 durability as well. They can afford to use it once and continue to then grow it forever. So it's going to be very obnoxious. So there are Corrosive Sludge. I looked at the rotation. Corrosive Sludge is coming in, but the problem is this is a 5-mana 5/5, which isn't that good anymore. Cards have gotten so good that you're not going to be able to do it. And also that's turn 5, right? The other cards that were in the set, you do have Ooze, but you just don't see it that much because it's a rare and it's not the best card again anymore. Rustdrop Viper is the big one that's actually rotating out. So, I mean, if this thing was in with Rustdrop Viper, it would still be really toxic, but at least there would be that answer that's relatively common, and Gluttonous Ooze is rotating out as well, although that was less common being an epic. So, I mean, this thing is just going to be absolutely devastating on turn 2 a large percentage of the time, so I think this is a pretty surefire should be banned card as well. And moving on to number 1 on the list, which is the Paladin win condition Templar Captain. This is an 8-mana 8/8 with Rush. After this attacks a minion, summon a 5/5 defender with Taunt. So it is very important that it has this thing doesn't have Taunt and it summons a Taunt. There are other cards like Priest had the 9-mana minion, which did something similar, but it was kind of limited by the fact that it had Taunt, so you can't protect it behind Taunt, right? This makes it more like a Wrapped Golem, where Wrapped Golem actually is rotating in also, by the way. But this thing would be so annoying when it came out and was still annoying. We've played with it in a rather recent rotation as well. But basically, sometimes like that 1/1 taunt would just be annoying enough that you just can't really get through to this thing, and you get so much value out of it. And this thing does the same thing, but instead of being a 7/5, it's an 8/8 with Rush. And oh, by the way, the taunt is a 5/5, not a 1/1. Slightly better than a 1/1. It's another thing where, I mean, if this thing can ever attack more than once, God forbid you ever give it, Wind Fury or something, like, not that that's too possible, but yeah, it's just the amount of snowball. If this thing ever lives for a turn, the game is like almost guaranteed to be over, because it's not like you can even smork them through it because there's a giant taunt in your way. So this thing is just absolutely brutal, and I know that they do like having some strong cards, but this is for Arena especially. This is just way, way over the top in my opinion. So hoping this card gets banned as well. And with that, that is it for the top 10 cards here. I do have to say, like, this was a very difficult list to make. Definitely leave in the comment section if there's anything specifically that you think should be on this list, because there were a lot of honorable mentions. If you're interested, let me know if you want to see, because I could very easily do like the next 10 cards, because there are some very good cards on that list as well. But yeah, if you like the video, like it, dislike it, subscribe if you want to see more of this arena style content. But yeah, thanks a lot for hanging out. We will see you guys in the next one.